Well, I have my project open, and I'm going to add what's called a slate. A slate is a title screen. It's one that is generally not shown to viewers. It is used purely for editing purposes and for people who are going to use your media. Okay, so it's not something that generally shows up when people watch this. But you're doing it for this assignment just to give a little information. So we want to make what's called a title, and you can either go up to this menu up here or just hit Control T. Control T gives you a new title. The width and height are set by the screen itself. And I will just give this a quick name, and I will call it Slate and say OK. You're opening a new box, and you'll see this is where the title is going to appear. Now, let's take a quick look at the project. And the reason why the title is appearing over images is because the playhead is over images. So as you can see in this title box, wherever I go to an image, that changes. So I want to have this be a title over black. Okay, it's going to be just empty black. And the first thing I want to do is run through the tools with you quick. There's an arrow tool, a positioning, rotation, and the text tool. By far, these are most of what you wind up using with titles. So go ahead and click the text tool, and let's just give some key information. So this is going to be my project, and I want to use the name of the painting. So the name of my painting was Starry Night, and I want to somehow actually, you know what? I don't want the name of the painting first, and this is probably a good exercise for you. I want to have the name of the painting second. So I want to have my own title, and I'm just going to go ahead and give this a title, and let's just call this Stars in Downtown Waterville. And see, my box isn't quite big enough, so I'm going to just make this a little bigger. I will drag it and get my text tool. Now you'll see my text looks a little strange, right? It looks a little drawn out, but I guess it's actually okay. So let's go ahead. We're going to move this around a little bit. And you'll see I can position it with the center, and I can get reasonably close, but I can't get exactly close. If I just hit this, this will put me in the vertical center. Whoops, I didn't want that one. I want this one. It'll put me in the horizontal center. So I was pretty darn close. And I want to put my name of my painting. And let's have one more. I'm going to put my name. And why don't we center that? And the last thing I want is my time. So I want the full time of this project. And I'm going to get that by looking right over here. And you will see this project is exactly 3126. So that's what I want here. Let's make sure I'm working over black. And let's go ahead. Now sometimes you got to remember to put on the text tool. I've sort of missed it there. So let's put the text tool back on. And it's hours. My computer's a little laggy tonight. There we go. Minutes. And seconds. And frames. And I was at, whoops, 3527. So let's make that quick fix. Okay, so that is my full information for this slate. Okay, so I now know the name of the title, I know the name of the painting, and let's actually put the name of the painter. And you'll see, whoops, I've kind of run over. So let me show you a couple quick things with this. To move things around, whoops, sorry, I just hit the selection tool. And I want to drag this here. Now I want to show you this trick let's say I decide I actually want to, increase this space. If I just hit this arrow key, I'm now changing a bunch of things about this. And just look at the type. So two things are happening. It's getting bigger, right? But also I'm changing the dynamics of the type. Like now it's suddenly a very vertical type. Now it's very wide and spread. And that's through here. This is the font size. This is the aspect ratio. The aspect ratio is the relationship of vertical to horizontal. I always want this to be 100 unless I'm intentionally trying to mess up text. And sometimes you are. So let me get back. Now I just got to 100. Now if I wanted to do something like stretch things, I hold the shift key down or move things around. And if I hold the shift key, if I go ahead and hold the shift key down, I can move things around and I will not affect the aspect ratio. Okay, so let me just position this. And if I hold shift down, I've now increased the font size. Okay, it's now 153 size, very, very, very too big, but the aspect ratio stayed the same. So you can use, for some reason it's not quite working for me. Anyway, you can use these corners, but you have to hold the shift key down, okay? Otherwise, you're going to be stretching and unstretching your whole font, okay? So I want to make this a rather normal size, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say 100. And I would really like to align this in the center of my page. I want to italicize this. I'm an English teacher, and I know we italicize stuff. This is my title, and I'd actually like to bold that, so I'm going to go over here and bold. And you'll see I've kind of lost a word because my box wasn't big enough. So I'm going to click the arrow key, come down here, and I'll hold the shift key down, and I've just opened it up a little. But I've retained my aspect ratio, okay? So please, 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 don't change crazy fonts. Don't make super vertical or super wide, okay? Now, let's look at one other thing here. And that is these guys down here. So let me move this up a little bit. These are all presets from Premiere. Some are darn professional looking, like this. Okay, you'll see that I've just increased size a little bit. I actually can't see everything now. Some are incredibly unprofessional, like hobo seems a little cheesy. Hobo leaning seems very cheesy. Myriad, one of my favorite fonts, is wonderful, but I really hate pink. So let's say that I want to make this title be Myriad Pro and nice and bold, condensed, very wonderful. I would never use pink in a font. And I'm going to go ahead and click this, and I can now adjust colors. I'm really big on white, and I'm just dragging to the brightest corner. But this template's very reddish, so if I would like to, maybe I'd like to find something that's sort of purplish, and maybe I want to add a tiny bit of a tint to it, like that. I could now make this like reasonably purplish and have it look very nice. If you take a quick look at fonts, and we've learned this sort of the hard way by seeing our work on big screens, Railroad Square. Okay, this is a nice solid font. It is not going to break up at all right? But this font, let's see if I can't really zoom in too much for you. This font, which is Adobe Arabic, is going to break up. The top of my D, the top of my O's, zeros, it's going to sort of fall apart when we render it. So I really recommend avoiding the default font and finding things that have a little bit of meat to them. You know, if that O is reasonably thick, it's not going to break up once you render it, okay? So you have a few other things you can work on here. You can do things like change the opacity of your text. That means I'm not changing the size of it, I'm changing how thick it is. All right, you only do that if you still can read the thing, but if you're like this, you're not going to be able to read it. You can change the position of it. You can get very precise. So if you're doing multiple titles and you need everything totally aligned, you just write these numbers down. You can rotate. I'm not a big fan of rotating. Fonts, aspect ratio. If you have multiple lines, the leading is the space between the lines. Kerning is the space between the letters. And you can go so tightly kerned that it's gobbledygook, or you can make it kind of funky and artsy, and that's -6. Okay, actually -7. So you can play around with that. The trick is to be consistent. This is now not a consistent page. You know, I have one font here. This is another font. I'm going to go ahead and make that myriad. I'm going to make this stuff myriad as well. And I'm going to also give these some nice white tones so that it's very readable. And you'll see that I've now messed up the alignment. So I want to hit center. I find this a little bit big and goodness a little pink, so I'm going to pop this over here. If you have all Fs, you're pure white. Okay, if you mix it over, you're adjusting things. Okay, you also don't want to have tremendously pure white, so we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, titles should not be totally pure white. So I'm going to lower the opacity of this a little bit. And actually lowering the opacity of my pure white to 86 would be beautiful. And I can slide it, or now that I know it, I can pop it like that. That's because when you look at a screen, you don't want to see something that's like so bright it's just burning you, okay? You want it like that. I can give things a sheen. A sheen is generally a line through them. I can add texture. I can change this fill type. If you watch, let's work just with this top one, okay? I can change the fill. The fill is what color the letters are. I can make it solid. I can ghost it, which sort of, you'll see, has kind of made it weird. I can use a gradient, and the one I especially like is a 4-color gradient. And let's watch what happens. I now have 4 corners. We're looking at stars in downtown Waterville. And let me make that a little bigger for you here. And let's say I want to keep that color here. Okay. The upper right of my color, I am going to double click that. And I'll make that sort of bluish. And you can see a little shift in these letters, right? You see a little whitish. Now there's a little dark purple up here. My lower quadrant, I'm going to actually make, not so dark, I'm going to make it a little goldish, weird, sort of lemony. I don't really like lemon. So a little goldish, something like that, maybe something like that. And now if you look at my letters, they now are almost this sort of yellowish, purplish dark, okay? So that's a 4-color gradient. You don't want to use that and make your work look like middle school, but it certainly does add a little bit of character to things, okay? And this is just a, you know, what you're doing today is just making a slate, which is like very basic information. If you were doing a pure, genuine title, you might just have one line, okay? I can change the opacity of any of these, so this kind of lemony thing I could make be a little fainter or just stop at 100. These are pretty basics. I could add a stroke around my letters, an outer stroke around the letters. In this case, it actually has a stroke that's like this color around them. And you can look at the difference in the letters. They just pop a little bit more like this. I tend to like to add shadows to letters. You can close things, open them up, and change them around a little bit. Okay, so that's some real basics on making a title. Okay, and in this case it's called a slate. The difference between a title and a slate is a title might simply be the name of the piece, of your piece. A slate actually gives specific information. And since you're turning it in, this is called a slate. All right, so once I'm set, this will save automatically. I go ahead and close. And now I'm going to find my title in project, and you'll see it's right here, okay, or my slate. And so this is automatically 5 seconds. I am going to hold my control key down. You'll see now I have all these little arrows, and I'm going to drag it right to the front and let go, and it's now pushed everything right down the line, okay? So now when I play, I also need to expand my little workspace. Now when I play, I'm going to have this for 5 seconds, and then I'll go right into my project, okay? I generally like to see a tiny bit of black space between the slate and the project, and the reason for that is that often, let me turn snapping off, often we cut the slate off. So when this project is fully done and we're ready to put it online, I'm going to tell you, hey, kill your slate, put just a regular title, okay, and then we'll export it finally. So that's the basics. Sorry this was a little long, but titles are complex, and I wanted you to have the basic understanding. All right, good. See ya.